Because what we do is we load what they call a geoid model into our data collectors. And that geoid model is supposed to have the exact, the geoid model works on a flat plane, basically.
What a surprise.
Let me see if I can get back here. So I'll kick up this. Okay, in the same data sheet, they give you coordinates, and these coordinates are just arbitrary that they've made up. They just assigned a coordinate to that latitude and longitude in this state plane. But the thing I want to point out is their scale factor. Their scale factor here, and this is what gets me. Let me go to the ARC calculator. Because this was a discussion I just had the other day. So if we go into the ARC calculator and I entered in the radius of the Earth, and this is this is the width, 10 miles that we're going to measure. Now, there's a difference between your arc length and your chord length. So if you flatten this arc out, it should be longer than your chord length, depending on the radius that you're working with. So I'll hit this for 10 miles. Now we can see the difference in 10 miles between the arc and the chord distance, and 10 miles is only a hundredth and a half of a foot.
That's unbelievable.
So, and if you take this to 30 miles, it's only, I think it equates to a half a foot. So what I'm trying to get at is the questioning, the whole reason why we use this 84 system. It makes absolutely no sense when I just showed you that in 10 miles, there's only a hundredth and a half, and a hundredth of a foot equates to an eighth of an inch.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And if you only are taking the land measurements and you have assumed that the water is curved like a sphere, then I can easily see how you come up with the shape of a geoid, is because there's not a lot of land compared to the water, and the water, it's not like they're out staking the water and they always talk about, we use these chains, and we do. Well, you didn't use chains in the water, so you've assumed that the ocean is curved. And if you've done that, then it doesn't surprise me that you're going to come up with a ball Earth. That was your assumption going in, and you've taken 70% of the surface and assumed it to be curved to a 3,959 mile radius.
Yeah.
Right. So what I'm getting at, this next thing I'll show you is just going to be mind-blowing. So they use this basically when we're using their state plane coordinate system. Our points are scaled, or our distances are scaled down. They take this 4 9s, 5 9 8 4, and what you do is you take your actual what it is your measured distance is going to be shorter than your ground distance. Does that make sense?
So it's saying basically then that the straight line distances are actually going to be not correct because they are changed by factoring in the difference in the arc distance?
Well, they're scaling the points down.
Okay.
Let me show you my whiteboard. Do I got to stop screen sharing to show you the whiteboard?
I think so, yeah, because we see your video, but you're only down in the little corner.
Okay.
All right, there you are.
Okay, so I don't know if you guys can see this very well, the numbers on here. So what I just told you is you got this arc distance in 10 miles and this chord distance. The only difference in 10 miles is a hundredth and a half. Okay, what they do in the state plane coordinate system that we work on is totally mind-blowing. They take this scale factor. So if I take this 10 miles right here, and I apply this scale factor to it, I shorten the distance by 2.12 feet.
Wow.
So it makes absolutely no sense that when we're working in the state plane coordinate system, that we scale these points down. Oops, picture fell. That ridiculous. Why in the world would they come up with a system that shortens these distances like that? And I believe the answer is because they want everybody, all the surveyors and anybody that uses GPS, to believe that there's this much difference in the arc of the Earth.
Wow, it's crazy because I'm going to have to really look into this, because what you're describing is kind of the missing piece of my entire explanation of the distances that planes fly. Because basically what you're saying, and I've said this before, is, they've got guys drawing pictures and say, well, you can't travel this distance on the flat Earth because it's way too far. And I keep saying, well, yeah, but we're looking at miles that are given to us. But they say, well, you couldn't make up that amount of miles. Well, what you're describing here is enough to make up, when you're flying a plane from, say, California to New York, we're told that's 2,500 miles, but we're told that's 2,500 miles with the arc of the Earth because it's a curved Earth, right? So how many miles is it really across a flat Earth without these adjustments? And, people might say, oh, well, that's crazy because now you're saying that the miles would be off. But again, we are at the behest of GPS, right? We use GPS for everything nowadays. They've already done it. They've done it before. We don't need to look at it anymore. So people would never question that, those differences when, he's just showed that in 10 miles, the difference is 2.12. That's interesting.
Exactly. So right down here, you have if you were surveying on the ground, you have this. And in state plane, basically, you're just scaling points down. So then we go out and we do all these measurements where we scale everything down. Then we've got to come back with a scale factor that's a little over 1, which is the reciprocal of this, to scale our points up and down. So basically, it's just a bunch of brain damage of scaling points up and down in their fake plane system to hide actually where we live. And that's how I see it.
Yeah.
Gee.
Very good. Yeah, it would be interesting to see how Jesse Kozlowski would respond to that.
Yeah, I would be interesting because I think he does say that he has these calculations, and I know Chris could tell us some of them, but they take their measurements and then they have to put them through formulas. They have to put them through equations to get the final product, and it's like, well, where are these equations stemming from? What is their purpose, and why are we having to take measurements and scale them down or reduce them? I mean, there's something in there that you would think that geodesists would notice or at least question. And I just think when you've built people up and told them, and I take nothing away from them. I think it's a great job. I think it's an amazing service that they do when you level for a mall or for a freeway. These things are needed every single day. The problem is that they tell them that their measurements are contributing to the overall shape of the Earth, and each geodetic surveyor only does a very small section. So they have to assume, well, I'm doing this section and so is doing that section, and there's thousands of us all over the world doing this, and together, when we put all these numbers together, they make a ball. And I don't think that they do.
No, and earlier when we were reading through their Bible, they basically admit that they've done all that from the stars. And one section in there, they even talk about how their imaginary arc that they have in the sky, how they project that down. And all of this, their whole entire book is based off the 2 sticks in the ground and their crude, rude measurements that they done way back in 250 BC. So all I say is, I think it's about time that they get back out there and start remeasuring.